part two of my comic book random thing. Whatever the hell I just did, this is the second part to that. Alright, so I was talking about comic books and extra dimensions and could you take the life of whichever one of you in another dimension is living and like switch places if you could. Now, for those who aren't really big Spider-Man fans, the last Spider-Man cartoon before the one that's on now, where he's a teenager again, when Spider-Man went to the planet, it's the Earth's twin planet, Earth 2 or whatever. It's like on the other side of the sun because scientists have been trying to prove that there's another planet just like this one on the other side. They have had documents and conspiracy theories and all this other crap. Well, before that even became a thought, Marvel and DC was doing it first. I don't know which one did it first because, like I said, I'm more Marvel, so I can assume that Marvel did it first, and I could be wrong, and you'll have to research it, and you can correct me in case I am wrong. I don't have a problem being wrong because you know what? Only God is right, even when it seems like it's wrong. But generally, only God is right. So, as we're going, because the last video was like a half hour, it was long. So I'm gonna go on. I might have to make a third video before the day is over with. Being that it is the second day, the snow still falling, and it is 1:42 on the 23rd now. It's no longer my cousin Russell's birthday. Okay, so while I'm on that subject, you know, the the thing with me, like I said, I'm more Marvel than DC, and I'm probably pissing off a lot of DC fans. And I stopped reading all the comic books only because, unlike everyone else, I really didn't like the way that things started going. And it doesn't just extend to Marvel, it also extends to DC because the death of Superman was like a really big fucking deal. And the death of Captain America was like a really big fucking deal. And when they killed these two guys, man, I'm like, you guys killed two icons. You couldn't kill Batman, but they have killed Batman before. But they couldn't kill him since they were killing Superman. And the X Men had already died, and that was part of their lore, which made them legends, which was cool as hell that Roma brought them back for the sacrifice that they did. But with Superman, it was a long time coming, and when they finally killed his ass, had Bill Clinton in the comic book, because it was the first comic book that DC actually had a real city with a real president, where Marvel has always had a real city with real presidents, because it's been stated that the only thing that separates Marvel from DC is that Marvel had more real locations. Every time you picked up a Marvel book, however unfortunate, most of the battles has really like torn New York City all to hell, or Los Angeles, or like Detroit, or somewhere up and down the eastern and the western seaboard. And then Death in Dallas for the X-Men was pretty fucking huge because they weren't on the East Coast or the West Coast. They were smack dead in the middle of the world, well, of America. And then, like when you go to these teams, Alpha Flight, they were in Canada. Wolverine's original team. You never really seen Wolverine in an Alpha Flight comic until like the crossover or whatever. But initially, he was from Alpha Flight. However, when you go back and read all these Alpha Flight books, you're like, okay, where's Wolverine? Where's Wolverine? So apparently, they kind of did that to make Alpha Flight more popular and make the book sell, because Alpha Flight was trying to hunt down Wolverine with Vindicator. I'm not really sure which one was Vindicator because his wife and Heather, they kind of wear the same suit. That's the same person, I'm sorry. The husband and wife both wear the Canadian maple leaf suit. And one of them was going by Vindicator, and the other one became Vindicator, and it just got all kinds of twisted up, just like when Snowbird gave Walter Lankowski her body, and She-Hulk became, She-Hulk, Bigfoot became a girl, basically, because I forgot what his name. He wasn't going by Bigfoot. I think he was going by Yeti. But Walter Lankowski was basically Bigfoot. He was a Sasquatch. That might have been what he was going by too. And then he became Wanda, and it was going by a girl. I think Puck was kind of rubbing that in his face a lot. But you know, you have to be an Alpha Flight fan to understand what the hell was going on. Because I was like, when the fuck did this happen? Apparently, I missed a few issues, but it did happen. And White Sasquatch was the shit, and she was hot. But that's because she was in Snowbird's body. I don't really know what happened to Walter's body, but somehow or another, he does eventually get his body back. And then Shaman, I forgot what his first name is, but his last name is Too Tall Men. He's a Native American, and you know he's a doctor. So somehow or another, and so was Walter Lankowski, which was really kind of crazy. It was everybody's been sleeping on Alpha Flight, okay, but they probably could make a pretty good movie with Alpha Flight too. And then also freaking whatever teams they had, they were always located in real locations, with the exception of Muir Island. I don't think that's a real place, but that's where Dr. McTaggart stayed, where Banshee was behind Xavier's back, messing with Maura McTarget and her son Proteus, the little kid that had the big orange monster around him. Anyway, you know, they had a lot of adventures in every Marvel superhero. From the Night Stalkers, who you probably guys don't know, but the original Night Stalkers is the first Ghost Rider, and then Blade, and then Morbius and Black Cat. Alright? So yes, Blade actually had a team not too long back, and he was the co-leader of the Night Stalkers with Johnny Blaze, who was the original Ghost Rider, who somehow gave it up to Dan Koresh. Koresh. I'm probably not saying it right. I really don't care because I wasn't Ghost Rider fan for him. I like Johnny Blaze, but I didn't like the second Ghost Rider. That makes sense? Okay, good. Anyway, then when it came down to like other heroes, you found them off in places. Proudstar, James Proudstar, he had a Arizona desert, his reservation, his whole clan, tribe, whatever you want to call it, were all wiped out. Moonstar, she was a Cheyenne, and her tribe, I forgot what was going on with her tribe, and Forge was also a Cheyenne. So, you know, and I think Scalp Hunter was also a Cheyenne, or Scalp Hunter, or whatever you want to call it. But they all did their thing, and they all was winding up in like real cities and states and stuff like that. Where when you're a DC fan, you have Star City, you have Coast City, you have a Star Labs in each one of them, and you have Metropolis and Gotham. Well, at one time they couldn't decide if Gotham or Metropolis was going to be New York, and so they had a big rumble about that. But Gotham initially was New York, but it became Philadelphia. All right. So if anybody gets a little confusion on that, Gotham was officially declared Philadelphia a few years back, maybe 10, maybe more, maybe less. I don't know, but it was declared to be Philadelphia, and I think they wanted to make Metropolis either New York or Los Angeles. I won't swear to that because, like I said, I'm not a big DC fan. I'm also not a big Superman fan because anytime you can spin around the city and pull one of these numbers, and now everybody knows that I'm not Clark Kent, I'm Superman. You know, I put my hair on the left and put a curl in it, and now I'm Superman. And how blind are the people in Metropolis? At least Batman wears a fucking mask. Now, I will say this, in case people don't know. When they changed Superman a few years back, he wore a hoodie. And before that, when he split in two, he did wear a mask because it was Superman white and blue, and Superman red and blue, where he didn't have the traditional Superman suit, but he split himself in half, and he was kind of wearing the uniforms like Hawk and Dove, only without the mask, which kind of would have been better if he actually would have had the Hawk and Dove mask. It probably would have made the comic a little, you know, more authentic or eccentric. Whatever one means something really fucking cool. But they didn't do that. They kind of sorry. They kind of really fracked it up, but it was good for how many issues there were. And I forgot what they did with the Matrix character, but he's had to use Matrix on quite a few occasions to proved to people that Clark Kent and Superman weren't the same guy. So that was pretty cool. But when they killed Superman, it like totally put everything in DC in an uproar. Everybody was stepping up, and all of a sudden there's like 4 or 5 other Supermen coming in. There was Connor Kent, the clone, who was part Lex Luthor and part Superman, because Lex engineered him. I think Lex made it so that he couldn't really be affected by kryptonite. I'm not going to swear to that because I could be wrong. Then there was John Henry Irons, who was the Black Superman. We all loved him. Shaquille O'Neal did a really good movie called Steel. Lots of people didn't give it the credit it deserves, and I think it deserves a remake, and I think Shaquille should do it again, just because he is John Henry Irons, for me. And then the Cyborg Superman, the guy with the face, which they took from Terminator, but Cable did it first. And then they tried to say Metallo did it first, but Cable did it first. And then, you can probably Google that, and they'll probably set you straight, because I could be wrong. I'll never not say that I can be wrong. I could definitely be wrong when it comes to that, because, like I said, I'm not a DC fan like talking about it. I've already named my favorite DC comic characters and my favorite DC books that I followed. I followed Batman. I followed The Flash until he became Wally West. I followed Green Lantern until they got rid of both Hal Jordan and John Stewart. And I followed Superman sometimey, but I also followed Green Arrow. And I followed Aquaman until they cut off his hand. I didn't buy those books. I would just go to the comic store and read them just so I could be up to speed. But as far as the only DC books that I would ever buy would most likely have been Batman or the Green Lantern. I really didn't buy the rest of them because they just weren't my thing. You know what I mean? They just really weren't my thing. And then freaking as far as Marvel, I had a clusterfuck of people that I really followed. I mostly followed the X-Men and Spider-Man. But I must thank Spider-Man, because if it wasn't for Spider-Man, I would have never known who the hell the X-Men were. But once I started reading the X-Men, every title connected to the X-Men was all I collected. More than Spider-Man, more than everybody else. I just had to have the X-Men. I ate, bled, and slept the X-Men. Because no one could fuck with them. Excuse me. And then, without the X-Men, I wouldn't have known about Guardians of the Galaxy, because Vance Astro had to fight Wolverine's great descendant, who they were fighting over his bones so that she could put the adamantium into her. Alright? And this is way before X-23. This is 90, 95, 96, somewhere in there. And also, fun fact, for everybody who does not know this, here's a fun fact for you. Marvel used to have G.I. Joe, and it used to have Transformers. And they were the first pair of non-mutant heroes and metallic heroes to do crossovers. And then other comics were really doing crossovers too, but G.I. Joe and Transformers really did crossovers. But the cartoon, Hasbro never crossed over the two cartoons until I think the last season of Transformers. But the only crossover you can really say they did, they had Cobra Commander in Rodimus Prime, because he turned Springer, RC, Rodimus, and Ultra Magnus into synthoids. So before that, they only showed that at the end, Cobra Commander outlived everyone. He outlived everyone at the very end. He outlived Megatron, he outlived Galvatron, he outlived Optimus Prime, and I'm like, how the hell did he do that? Because in G.I. Joe the movie, he was turned into a snake. But they did make some comeback cartoons for G.I. Joe, and Cobra Commander got turned back to normal, and he turned Serpentor into this iguana type thing, and he ran away and was never seen from again. And I think they answered the question of Storm Shadow and who killed his father. And then his uncle. And then him and Snake Eyes and them had their whole little ninja squad and everything. The toys were awesome, except for that ninja action crap really fucks up a toy. Alright? So getting back onto the comic books before my thing hits the 15-minute mark. That way. I'm probably going to go another 15 after this, but, the whole thing is that since I'm more Marvel than DC, I can give you more facts on Marvel than DC. But when it came down to like certain things with DC, when Robin died, you know, they had a vote on it before the issue was to drop. They had a vote on how Jason Peter Todd was supposed to go out, which in Crisis, I think, on Two Earths or Crisis on Infinite Earth or whatever the hell the big thing was, where Superman was supposed to come to our world, who never came to our world, punched the fabric of reality and fucked everything up in DC Comics. And in the end, Jason Peter Todd pops back into existence and becomes the Red Hood. Don't ask. I can't explain it because I'm probably going to explain it wrong. But as far as I know, that's kind of how it happened. That's kind of how it was explained to me. And I could be deadly wrong. Not that I care. But then, you know, freaking, the whole other thing. Freaking, damn it, sorry, Swamp Thing fucked me up. And yes, Swamp Thing is a DC comic, not to be mistaken with Marvel's Man Thing. I think Swamp Thing had an actual better story. And the Man Thing movie totally had nothing to do with, like, the comic initially for sci-fi a few years back. Because Man Thing's supposed to be a hero, and this thing didn't really give him any kind of justice, and I think he was, like, more of a villain instead of a hero. Anyway, so moving on. Freaking, the, when it comes to this Marvel DC rivalry, for me, I'm always going to be a Marvel fan, and I got off track, so I'll try to get back on track. When Jason Peter Todd was supposed to die, the vote came in. I think maybe 3 people called in to save Jason Peter Todd or to vote for him to be in. I was one of those 3 people that's like, let him live, dude, let him live. And unfortunately, that didn't work out. Joker blew that motherfucker to smithereens. Who figures? So then, after that, on the other side of the spectrum, for Marvel, they killed Doug Ramsey. Magic got turned back into a little girl. They were working their way to making Madeline Pryor evil. And Polaris got possessed by some damn body. Malice? Somehow, something happened with Polaris. And then Havoc and then left her. And then she became, I want to say a marauder. Because, yeah, she became a marauder. Because Scalp Hunter, however the hell you say it. I want to say Scalp Hunter. He was the leader of the Marauders. And, they took her and they left. And Havoc stayed with them. Cyclops left to form X Factor. And then, within a year or so of that, the Fall of the Mutants came. And that's when everybody started getting fucked up. And that's when Illyana had got the Soul Sword taken. And that's why she reverted back to a girl. But she got it back, and then she fused it with Excalibur. So the only 2 people who could control it was Illyana and Kitty Pryde. And Kitty Pryde had left the Soul Sword in limbo, being that she and Illyana were the only 2 who could summon it. And Illyana was about to die. So I guess that's how she got turned back into a little girl. And then her and Renee and all the other New Mutants were running around. And then the X-Men were in Dallas. And Madeline was with them. And then all of them were killed by Forge, who was also an X-Man. We had to put a spell on him to conquer the adversary spell, because he was also a Native American. So it was like witchcraft from both Native American sides. And then they were like fighting dinosaurs and all this crap. I think that was probably one of the comics that kind of started setting Wolverine and having them above all the rest, because the X-Men started doing things that they really had to do to save things. And then after they got back, and then the Inferno Saga started. So once the Inferno Saga started, it started going from like crazy to super crazy, because by then Magneto was no longer leading them. and he didn't really want them to go to Dallas, but they left anyway. Nightcrawler, I forgot, but he broke his leg. Kitty stayed with him, and then that left Havoc, Storm, Dazzler, Rogue, Psylocke, Wolverine, and Colossus, and Madeline Pryor. So those guys were sacrificed by Forge to seal the adversary into eternity. And then Roma, she was like some goddess or something who was watching it from England, decided to bring them back from the dead so that they could never be seen on camera. So if I was an X-Men, this would be all pixelated and blurry and everything. And they can't be detected by any kind of cameras or whatever. So that's was like their whole thing, which is what started the X-Men Live thing, because people would see them or be saved by the X-Men. And so they started spray painting X-Men Live. And that really started catching on. It's kind of like, remember when Farscape was being canceled and everybody started rallying together and donating money and everything. And it's We Are Farscape shirt came out and all that other stuff. And it saved the show, or at least made enough so that the show could finish off peacefully, because I did touch on that cop-out thing. What kind of felt like that? It kind of felt like when the X-Men went in their new direction, they felt like it copped out for me. And so I stopped reading them. And it's not that I hated the characters, but the writers, I just was never going to be in agreement with where they were taking the heroes. No. And then it was like the same thing with DC. When they killed off Superman, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't shed a tear. I was kind of happy. Where when they killed off Cap, I was mad as hell. Because I was like, Cap has been through so much shit. He's been replaced. He got his job back. He got replaced again. Then he got killed. You know, because when he got replaced, I forgot what um, the big stink was, which made him give up the shield and the suit. And then John Walker got it, because John Walker became Captain America for like a year, I think. It was either a year or 6 months, but I know it was like maybe 7 or 8 issues before Marvel started doing that 2 issues a month thing. And then next thing I knew, Cap was U.S. agent, and I'm like, what? What the fuck was the point of you giving up one shield for another shield? And then John Walker, who had done so good as Cap, got the job as U.S. agent. And I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? So you can see how things kind of started making me mad, where DC was like on a straight line. And so if you weren't really down with DC, you could go away from DC and come right back, and nothing's really like totally fucked shit up. Where Marvel started going all over the place in certain books, and Captain America was one of those books, and so was the X-Men and damn near every X title, and so was Spider-Man. And I'm not gonna say they weren't good reads; they were great reads. But then they started like making your characters do all kinds of fucked up shit. And it's kind of like the first time like they introduced the female thing and Herbie and all this other stuff, and they got rid of Herbie and then he came back. Yeah, then they got rid of the Human Torch and Herbie became like the permanent member. And then like the same thing with the Inhumans, same thing with the Shi'ar Empire, and I think in the late '90s, Corsair got a miniseries, and then they brought in Adam X, and they explained that he was a product of rape from D'Ken. He was D'Ken's son and Scott Summers' mother's son. And then they brought in Falcon, and he was Corsair's son and one of the Starjammer ladies or some alien lady's son. So it was really kind of fucked up. So when they switched the Guardians of the Galaxy in 2008 and stuff, I was pretty much done. Because it's like, you know what? I can't keep going through this shit. And then it really hurt me when they got rid of the Guardians of the Galaxy, because they, the main two in there was like Yondu and Major Victory. They were the only two I really remember well. And the guy with the flat head with the machine gun, he was like the space guy who was supposed to be like the Punisher of the group. And then Howard the Duck made some guest appearances. And then him and Rocket started having problems. It was like a big clusterfuck of problems. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. And then I would flip over to the X-Men. And that all kind of happened in that Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane era, and the X-Men and Spider-Man and them, they started, like, the writers and the artists started wanting their rights, and I don't blame them, you know. But Marvel was more corporate than fan based, and so they started getting rid of people, and then Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, and a couple of other guys I can't remember the names. They started coming out with Image, which brought in Spawn and Savage Dragon and Youngblood and Battalion. I forgot the name of his group. I think it was Stormwatch and Cyberforce and all kinds of other stuff. And, and they were good comics, great comics, especially Spawn and Youngblood. They were my favorite, and Wildcats. Those were like my favorite three out of the whole Image line. And then Savage Dragon was coming in a smooth fourth, and then everything else under that was like on my list of I'll read them, but I probably won't buy them. But as far as the first four, I bought some Savage Dragons. I think somebody stole them. I definitely bought some Spawns. I think somebody stole them. I bought Wildcats. Nobody stole them because Wildcats was like my number one. And then the good thing about Image is that they didn't start off with a number one comic. They all started off with an issue 0. And everyone's like, what? It's like never been done before. So it's like one of those things. And then, depending on how good of a fan you are, Jim Lee, great Chinese guy, went to DC. And he took Grifter with him. So that kind of fucked up my whole Wildcats thing there because I think he may have taken all of them, but I'm not really sure. But once he took Grifter, then Grifter made a TV appearance outside of Wildcats on a DC movie. They say Wonder Woman. You have to Google it. Anyway, I'm getting close to the end of this. I'm going to have to make a third part, which kind of sucks, but okay. So, I kind of, I slid off track a little bit. But, when you're reading these comics, you can't help but slide off track because you have to jump from comic person to comic person because if you're really into comics, you kind of can't just read one, especially when they start crossing over. And this is how I got fucked up on Ghost Rider because I knew about the first Ghost Rider, but I never knew what happened to him. And when I first got my first information cards, the baseball cards, but the information cards to give you the power readings, this, that, and whatever, and it fill you in. And it just said Dan Koresh. It's like, who the fuck is this guy? It's like Ghost Rider. He was the Ghost Rider. They crossed over into the X-Men books, or X-Force books rather, and then went back where the original Ghost Rider was running around the streets with Blade, fighting God knows what and who with Black Cat and Morbius. They were fighting vampires, and he had his hair. So my second father and I got to talking and say, hey man, this damn comic book called Night Stalkers? He said, yeah, it's got the original Ghost Rider. I said, it does? That's like not the black guy. The black guy's not Ghost Rider. Blade's a half vampire. He said, yeah. Johnny Blaze, God bless you, Rick. Johnny Blaze was the original Ghost Rider. It's like, so that's why I know that name. But the funky part about that, back in the 90s, Spider-Man had a cartoon on Fox. Came out about the same time as that damn Eat the Cat, with always hollering some damn Kumbaya crap. Which came also back out with the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and everything. Well, Eat the Cat and them all came out. Blade made appearances on Spider-Man. And him, Morbius, and Black Cat were the Night Stalkers, but they left off Johnny Blaze. But yet Ghost Rider also came on that cartoon. I'm like, okay, how come you can have all the Night Stalkers but Johnny Blaze? Well, kind of find out, I think it probably had something to do with rights and stuff. And the Night Stalker comics were like defaulting, which is probably why they had Blade come on there and give him some kind of a storyline. But as far as I know, Blade never met Terry, and Terry was just like for the Spider-Man cartoon. I never ever saw her in a comic book. It's kind of like the same thing with Officer Montoya. She was in the comic book for Batman, but she wasn't like a major league hitter. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with Bullock. Until like the 90s Batman cartoon came on where you had the big chin and the cars. You couldn't really tell what damn time period they were in. Because things were modern but not modern. And they had like classic cars, but the Batmobile was like a stretch limo, but it was like the Batmobile. And then Officer Montoya was on that. And then when they did it again on the CW, they had Officer Wei Lin, who was my favorite DC extended area cop, but she was never in the comic books. And sometimes they do that so that cartoons can have like that Fox or whatever company puts it on there can have that character. They kind of do that for like all medicinal purposes or whatever. And I'm at the 30-minute mark, so I have to stop this and do a third part. But before I do, because a lot of people don't understand, Morph was not an original X-Men character. Fox had an agreement, so when they got the X-Men, they gave them an X-Man of their own. And in closing, I will do a third video.